So say a little bit more about narrative. If I hadn't heard that word and wouldn't know what it means, like how can I understand that more in a practical sense? If I would enter into a course with you and you teach me about narrative, what would I learn?
I don't know, you ever heard a story? I mean, they're all around us, right? We map the world cognitively and we map the world affectively. The affective mapping of the world is value that's attached. In other words, value itself is experienced emotionally. Value is not an intellectual concept, it is an emotional commitment, and it's an emotional understanding of the world. And so, and we know that there are certain kinds of emotions that facilitate mindful action and others that inhibit it. We know that without an experience of urgency or anger to break through habit, we don't pay attention. And so, in a sense, in order to get attention requires creating conditions that are experienced as anxiety. Otherwise, we're just on autopilot all the time. But then how we respond to that depends on whether we're in a fear mode or in a hope mode. And because in the fear mode, we'll contract, we'll strike out, we'll get paralyzed. In a hope mode, we'll explore, we'll ask questions, we'll get curious. And so it's sort of, and it relates to the function of the brain, the disposition system and the surveillance system and the way they interact. And so the challenge is to, on the one hand, create the kind of urgency that gets engagement, but on the other hand, inspire hope to counter fear, empathy to counter isolation, and self-efficacy to counter self-doubt. So the challenge here is how to access those emotional resources that enable mindful action, that enable action with intentionality. Now, stories are the way in which we learn to do that, because a story is really a moment of agency. In other words, what makes a story, a plot, is a protagonist is confronted with a challenge for which he or she is unprepared, and then has to deal with, and then they struggle to deal with it, and then it produces an outcome. And then there's a moral that we get from that. Now, because we can identify empathetically with the protagonist, we can experience the content of the story, not just understand its intellectual point, but we fear that we can experience the fear, the hope, the courage, and so by identifying with the protagonist, the moral we draw is a moral to the heart, not just to the head. It's like, because see what happens in a story, everybody pays attention. If I just say, I got up here and came here, that's not a story. I got up here and went outside and an elephant fell on me. And he said, well, what makes it interesting is the unexpected. That's when people pay attention. They pay attention in order to learn how to deal with the unexpected. That's what's at stake. But they're not interested in learning how to deal with elephants. They're interested in learning how to deal with their own hearts, how to deal with the need for courage, the need for forbearance, the need for creativity, the need for imagination. And so that identification process then teaches us how to be actors under conditions of agency. Because agency is when the rule books don't apply. I mean, in other words, core to the human experience is the experience of choice. The experience of choice is a very scary one. It's exhilarating and it's scary. It's both. Because, hey, if it's all clear what to do, that's not the deal. But usually it's not. And so here we are. Well, do we do this? Do we do this? What are the resources we draw upon to help us deal with that? Well, 85% of the time parents spend with young children isn't telling them stories. They tell them about Uncle Charlie and so forth, and what they're teaching them how to be agents, how to be choiceful. But they're teaching their hearts how to handle it, not just their heads how to handle it. Our faith traditions are all articulated through narrative. Our cultural traditions, family traditions. So narrative is not like a little, here's a little story to entertain you. It's a fundamental way in which we understand who we are in the world.
On our website globalleadership.tv, you will find additional footage, other dialogues with innovation leaders from around the world, and also the hands-on practices that help them and their organizations to move from inspiration to real change.